Now we're going to hear from one of the finest economists in the state, Jim Rounds. Jim, good morning.
Good morning.
Boy, I want people to see this on YouTube because Jim has a sweet Adidas cap on. Looks like he just went out for a round of golf. I look like someone who got no sleep and has no hairline, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about that.
I'm heading out right after this for vacation. So
well, thanks for squeezing us in, Jim. Okay, so let's talk about tariffs specifically from the standpoint of here's Walmart, a company that employs a lot of Arizonans, and is saying that it may have to raise its prices because of tariffs. And President Trump's response in a very Trumpian way was, well, they should eat the tariffs. Regardless of how President Trump's style is, what message does that send to corporate America to say, hey, you want to raise prices? I don't think you should do that.
It's a bad message. I mean, the tariffs are a tax on the importing companies. And so we knew that this was kind of a backdoor sales tax on the American people. Of course, the businesses are going to make adjustments, and we're ultimately going to be paying higher prices in the long run. So this was fully expected. This is how tariffs work. This is how we read about it as far back as Econ 101, even in economics classes in high school. So nothing here should be a surprise. The bullying tactics I kind of don't like because that gets away from our kind of free enterprise principles.
Well, in particular, too, this is a company, obviously, that a lot of consumers, and Walmart's very successful for a reason, because people go and buy a lot of stuff there. So what do you make of the underlying message, maybe even not underlying, of President Trump saying, I'll be watching, but also your customers are going to be watching? That's bullying, but also, is it one of those things that, I think most customers realized that, at least at this point, that Walmart's going to have to raise prices if everyone else is, right? Or are people not aware enough of that?
Well, everybody's going to be raising prices if it's impacting the stuff that you're going to buy, where the tariffs apply. So, if Walmart was competing with Target for, non-food items, Target's going to raise their prices as well. Walmart competes with grocery stores for the food items. The grocery prices are going to be going up. So when it impacts all the different businesses, the businesses have cover. You can't say the customers are going to single them out. They're going to single the federal government out for the higher prices and the higher rates of inflation. So
let's talk about tariffs up and down. Now, you've talked about this a lot with a lot of folks, but the idea of even changing the percentage and President Trump going back and forth and saying, and we're going to have trade deals here and there. Uncertainty, we know, is not a word that markets like. The reality, they don't like it. What if he had just gone about the idea of this is what the tariffs are going to be, and people could be upset about it, make the point that you've made about these are taxes, and yet just gone ahead with it? Has it made it worse by being so inconsistent?
It's made it worse in terms of like the stock market. Investors don't like that kind of uncertainty, and so that's why we've seen so much volatility. It might make a little bit more sense in any behind-the-scenes strategic deals that he might be making, but when you go out and you say, I'm going to charge 100% tariff, and then you cut it back to 25% when it previously was lower or non-existent, it's still an increase. And so you can't really claim credit for the reduction if you're coming off of an original base that was near zero. So I get that there's some negotiation happening, but whenever we're talking about these deals are taking place, they're never formal deals. It's some whispers and some quiet meetings. There's nothing formal written about them. There's no documentation of anything. So that just adds to the uncertainty. From an economic perspective, the tariffs are bad for the economy, but there's some other things that they're negotiating as well. With China, the big thing is intellectual property rights violations. Well, maybe there's some stuff going on with that. With Mexico, there's been some discussions of drug trade cooperation that we haven't been getting as much of as maybe we expected. So there's more going on than just the price changes. But for the president to say Walmart's being irresponsible by raising their prices, he's going to say every business in America is going to be irresponsible for raising their prices, and you can't do that.
Economist Jim Rounds of Rounds Consulting, Steve Goldstein for Mike Broomhead on the Mike Broomhead Show on KTAR News. A few more minutes left with Jim. So, Jim, this was something that came to mind for me this morning. We had State Senator T.J. Shope on the program in the last hour, talking about the state budget. I know you do a lot of work at the Capitol. What's the impact potentially of tariffs, economic slowdown? They're going to have to get a budget done by June 30th. Are there concerns about that going forward for you as far as how that's going to affect what Arizona's bringing in, how much we can spend?
They'll get the budget done, but they're still they're dealing with education funding issues, and that's the big holdup. But overall, the economy is only slightly slowing. If you back out the recent activity with the tariffs and the discussion of the Medicaid cuts and everything else, the federal government activities really, the economy was starting to slow, but it was still okay. We weren't in for a recession within the year. Now economists are saying that there's a 60% chance that we'll have a recession this year. I think if we do, it probably would be next year instead, and it'll be a mild recession in Arizona. But even a mild recession, it means that the state will have to come up with about $1.5 billion if it's going to not do massive budget cuts or raise taxes. And that's exactly how much we have in the state's rainy day fund. But what's disappointing is that the rainy day fund was increased from $1 billion to $1.5 billion back during the discussions of the income tax cuts and some other economic development reforms, where we wanted to keep that in place so that when we did have a slowdown, we could keep the economic development programs moving forward. Now we're using it just to backfill basic recession issues. So that extra cushion that we had is basically gone, but it's a good thing that it was put in place.
Well, Jim, as a layperson, so what is the point of the rainy day fund? When should it be used?
So we create this, it's called the Budget Stabilization Fund. It's basically a savings account where we set aside money for when we have quote unquote rainy days, which means the economy is slowing. And we have a very healthy rainy day fund at $1.5 billion. So we have enough to get through modest recession right now. But that also means that we can't increase spending in a lot of other areas. And one thing that the state doesn't do a good job of, yes, we're very business friendly. We've created all these economic development programs, but we're not very good at calculating how some programs and some investment can create more revenue than it actually costs. We call these positive ROI projects. And in some cases, like investing in the state land department or investing in education programs, whatever it may be, if we spend $1, but it returns maybe $3 in additional economic activity, then the taxpayer benefits. We're not going to be able to invest in any of those if we're barely going to be balancing the budget for the next couple of years, which is means we're going to miss some opportunities to maybe do some good in some different areas and also save the taxpayer some money along the way.
Last thing for you, Jim, consumer confidence, consumer sentiment at its lowest level in quite a long time. How much weight do you put in that? And is that because of tariffs?
It's because of the uncertainty that you brought up earlier. And so we're going to see that going forward. And it does have to do with the stock market, but that's because of the uncertainty. So pretty much everything that's weighing on people's minds and on households has to do with the uncertainty. And actually, there is some certainty in knowing that prices are going to be going up. We're not going to come out of this without some additional inflation. But if I was, I've said this many times, if I was going to be in any state during the next economic downturn, it would be Arizona. We're going to be able to weather this better than others because we did plan ahead. We did change our economy after the Great Recession, and we're gonna hold our own during the next downturn, and we should rocket out of the next downturn as long as we're careful and we don't overspend and we utilize that rainy day fund that we talked about as efficiently as possible.
Okay, economist Jim Rounds of Rounds Consulting. Jim, good to talk with you. Enjoy the vacation. Thanks again.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.